introduction, we will start with James, and then we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mr. Anton.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you for having us to the Fernandina Observer. For those of you that I've not met, my name is James Anton, and I'm a local chiropractor, personal trainer, and my wife and I started our business here about 10 years ago almost. It's kind of hard to believe that that's coming up. And what pushed me into becoming a city commissioner was inadequate and inappropriate process and policy that I felt like I wanted to challenge. And that's basically what made me decide that I wanted to run for election. And here now I hope to become your mayor on the premise that I'd like to help our city find ways to increase revenue without raising the millage rate, and also improve policies, processes, and procedure from the top down so that everything from the city manager to departments are able to actually be objectively evaluated. That information can make its way to you citizens, and there's a much more transparent process of how the city's run day to day.
Thank you, Dr. Anton. Now I would like to turn it over to Mayor Bean for his 1-minute introduction.
Thank you very much, Mayor Lentz. It is an honor to be with you all tonight. I'm Bradley Bean. I'm your current mayor running for re-election, and Fernandina Beach is my home. This is where I grew up. I went through all of our local schools. I went to Fernandina Beach High School, where I graduated valedictorian. I went to the University of Florida to get my engineering degree and came back home to work. And that's what I want to highlight tonight is jobs. Without jobs in our community, there are young families like mine who would not be able to live in our wonderful town. It's because we have a strong and diverse economy that people of all walks of life can be here. As your mayor, I have focused on good budgeting. As your mayor, I delivered the first budget in over a decade that didn't raise your taxes. Sounds like a low bar to hit, but folks, we did it. We didn't raise taxes there. But with that, we still covered parks and recreation, the largest public safety budget in our city history, among many other great things our city needs. So I look forward to a great debate tonight, and thank you again to the Fernandina Observer for hosting.
Thank you, Mayor Bean. Mr. Pointer.
Hi, my name's Tim Pointer. Moved here 25 years ago with my family. With my family, we have several businesses downtown. I've been a commissioner a couple times, and I want to take those experiences and get back onto the commission to try to help the city get to a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Minshew.
Thank you, and thank you to the Fernandina Observer for hosting this candidate forum. It is so important for our voters to obtain as much information as they can about the candidate. I am running because I want this city to be better at processes, better at budgeting, better at long-term planning, and I know that I can help move that city forward, move the city forward in that direction. I'd also like to thank the Observer for the flexibility that you have shown me since I am out of town this week. So again, I look forward to this debate or this forum, and I look forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Christy Kelly.
Hey everybody, I'm Christy Kelly. I'm running for seat 3. I'm a mother of 3. I'm a Florida native. Have several businesses throughout the last 30 years. I just wanted to apply that to our city commission. I just want to serve. It's time to serve the community, and I thought I'd go big. Why not get on the city commission, apply some of my knowledge, business knowledge, and work on some of the challenges that I see here in the city of Fernandina Beach. Thank you so much for having me today, and I look forward to a great forum.
Thank you. Ms. Tootin.
Hi, my name is Joyce Tootin. I'm a retired high school science teacher, mother of 2. My husband's a retired U.S. Army colonel. His dad's from North Florida, and his parents had a place here in Fernandina for almost 50 years. So when we retired, we were able to come back here. Very excited, love this town. I'm running because I'm hoping to help move it in a different direction. I am a community advocate, have always been in all the communities we lived in, volunteered in so many different areas, and I hope to bring that team spirit to help leading this city in a different direction. I believe that we need to preserve the character of our city. We need to preserve the quality of our life. We need to think of the residents before the developers, residents before the tourists, and that's where I'm hoping we're going. Thanks.
Thank you all very much. I turned my attention to our Commissioner James Anton, who is running for mayor. We're going to ask him one question, and then he will be dismissed to sit in the audience, and you may sit there if you'd like to. I'm flexible. Commissioner Anton, why do you want to be the mayor, and how do you see the mayor's role in the city?
Sure. Well, I'd like to be the mayor because having had 2 years of experience in this role, it's enough time to get your feet wet and to really familiarize yourself with city staff, all the other boards and volunteers that participate in what makes this really huge orchestra of a city to continue running the way that it does. So I believe I can be your mayor because I want to make sure that we hear from you. I'd like to move our public comment back to the front of meetings. I'd like to make sure that we have discussions about agenda items before they get voted on. That way the commission doesn't feel blindsided by things that the community may have feelings about, and perhaps city staff didn't have that research. Furthermore, as we've said, development is always a concern, and I campaigned on the idea that you cannot stop development, but you can control it. And I think that's going to be critical, is really making sure we work with our comp plan, fine-tune old policies and things so that we make sure we're not missing loopholes and ways that unscrupulous development slips its way in. Furthermore, I think it's important, as I mentioned, to continue exploring avenues of how we can generate revenue for the city without increasing tax. And there's a number of things that can do that. Happy to speak more privately about specifics, but I believe I've spoken pretty extensively about ideas such as the My Fernandina program, as well as just looking at fees and structure, excuse me, within our regular fee schedule. So I look forward to the opportunity to serve you for 2 more years, whether it's mayor or vice mayor, and I'm open to any questions, comments, or concerns that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anton. You're dismissed to sit in the audience, or like I said, you can remain there if you'd like to. The very first question that we have, the order will go 2, 4, 5, 3, 1. So, Mr. Pointer, you are number 2, so you get to hit this ball first. 2 major September storms overwhelmed the city's stormwater and wastewater systems, and many city properties were flooded as a result. As a city commissioner, what actions would you take to protect the properties, and how would the city pay for the system improvements?
Well, I think one thing I would do is when you have a consultant that says you need to charge more money for stormwater and for tap-in fees, I would listen to them and actually charge the new people coming in the extra dollars, so it's not going to fall on the citizens down the road. We do have some problems with this, a lot of challenges, especially in the city, because there's a lot of infilling development that's going on. And I think the city is going to have to really double down on this. If you're going to want to have development on infill, there's going to have to be a way of getting that stormwater off the property and not onto your neighbor's property. And I think some of the things that they're talking about now are not, because I've been faced with the same stuff. It's almost impossible to keep all your water on a piece of property without spending a gazillion dollars. And I think the city is going to have to start working with the community and figuring out how to tap that into the existing system.
Thank you. Ms. Christy Kelly, would you like me to repeat the question?
I believe I've got it. How would I work on or work towards solving our water, sewer,
Stormwater. Yes, ma'am.
I would strongly consider reallocating some funds that are being spent where we don't necessarily need them immediately into these problems. We've got another hurricane possibly coming our way towards Florida. That's never going to end. For as long as we all live here, we're going to experience hurricanes. There is money, in my opinion, that's being spent now where it doesn't absolutely need to be spent. And my goal and my commission seat will be to allocate towards our needs and not our wants.
Thank you. Ms. Tootin, would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Two major September rainstorms overwhelmed the city's stormwater and wastewater systems, and many properties were flooded as a result. As a city commissioner, what actions would you take to protect properties, and how would the city pay for the system improvements?
Thank you. At our last duty station in Maryland, I sat for 4 years on our city sustainability committee, and our job was to stick our fingers in every pot of city business to make the city more resilient. And most of the time, we would save money along the way. And our wastewater and our stormwater systems are broken. They have some serious problems. And when as Tim said, when the consultants said we should have gone to $10,000 fees, we dropped them instead down to $3,000 fees. When our wastewater, so our toilets and our showers, our wastewater is about 1.5 million gallons a day. When those storms hit, we went up to 7 million gallons. And the system can't handle that. So they had to overflow untreated sewage into the Amelia River. And systems used to be connected. It was the only way that you could get a sewage system to run, because 200 years ago, you didn't have the proper engineering to do it. So you would rely on a storm to flush sewage. But of course, in the last 100 years, most modern cities have separated those systems. But it's extremely expensive, it's extremely difficult, and clearly ours hasn't been done. We have leakages and breakages in the system. It's going to be incredibly expensive to find them and fix them. And as we develop more, it's only going to get worse. And we know the top 1% of storms are only becoming stronger. And so what are we going to do? There are things we can do in our land development code. We can actually flip-flop our impervious permeable surface. Right now we allow 60% of a parcel to be paved over or roofed over. Most cities do 40-60. So we could fix that. We could improve our swales and our rainwater. We need to protect it, our canopy, grow our canopy. There are a lot of things the city could do.
Thank you, Ms. Tootin. I turn now to Ms. Minshew. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you. So clearly, we have a new priority in the system, in the city, in that our stormwater system was not adequate to handle the most recent events. My neighborhood flooded for the first time in memory, and it's because piping was crushed, and stormwater drains were not clean, and suddenly there was flooding up and down in areas that never been flooded. The other issue I think we have is that we're not really properly prepared. We do not have adequate maps or understanding of actually where our stormwater easements and our stormwater drains are in the city. So again, this is like a whole new priority. I also agree that we need to relook at the impact fees that were reduced a year ago and bring them back up to what the consultants had recommended as a way to get started on this. But clearly, this is an area that has not had enough attention paid to it, and is going to need a lot of attention in the coming months and years. And I'm ready to help the city make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Bean, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, ma'am, Mayor Lentz. So first, let me set the record straight on impact fees. So this is something that came before the commission. There are only two legal ways to charge impact fees. The consultant actually had two recommendations. If you watch that meeting, there were multiple recommendations from the consultant. One slightly reduced the impact fees for a hookup, and one tripled them on our residents that are moving here and our residents that are building their houses. So we went with the option that didn't triple the impact fees for hookups, and that does affect a lot of people. So it was still a recommendation from the consultant, so just to make sure that point is clear. We had some unprecedented month, the past month here in Fernandina Beach. As the mayor, I declared 3 different states of emergency within a 30-day period. That was because of our 2 hurricanes and that rain event. And I want to talk about the rain event that occurred right before our 2 hurricanes. We received in an 8-day period 20 inches of rain, and that's a lot of rain. Compare that to our most recent storms that had water. That was Irma, and Irma had 17 inches of rain. So it was the amount of rain that a big hurricane would bring, and that is what really hit our system hard. Our wastewater system can handle 2.5 million gallons of volume every day. In a pinch, we can hit 3. But during that period of time, due to our old pipes, things like that, we had 7 million gallons in multiple 24-hour periods hit the system. That is more than double what we can handle in a given day. And that's what we were dealing with, and that's what we were making sure we can handle. The entire ground was saturated, but I'll tell you what it did do. It revealed our hotspots over on 4th, 12th Division, 15th, Via Del Rey. We want to make sure that we have protection in our most vulnerable areas. It's a lot of our historic neighborhoods that weren't originally built with curb and gutter, but now we need to make sure that they are. We have our stormwater department. Andre is actually working on a plan for us to move forward here because this event has revealed to us what we need to continue to work on. We'll continue to budget for it, and we'll continue to make things happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bean. The next question will actually go in the order of 1, 3, 5, 2, and 4. So Mayor Bean, you go up back to back. Paying for maintenance, new projects, and renovation means that there are not sufficient tax revenues to get things done. The downtown renovation is currently $2.2 million. The flood protection wall is $14 million. Beach walkovers cost about $300K each. Stormwater improvements will cost millions, as just discussed. The golf course and marina require $1.6 million of support each year. As commissioner, how can the city dig itself out of this financial hole to prioritize the projects?
Can you repeat the question, Ms. Lentz?
There's a lot of stuff in here that we have to pay for. Paying for maintenance, new projects, and renovations means that there are not sufficient tax revenues to get things done. The downtown renovation is currently $2.2 million. The flood protection wall is $14 million. Beach walkovers cost about $300,000 each. Stormwater improvements are very costly. The golf course and marina require $1.6 million of support each year. As commissioner, how can the city dig itself out of this financial hole?
Well, thank you, Mayor Lentz. So first, I'm going to disagree with the premise of the question. We have funding, and we have $175 million that we spend on an annual basis. So let me start by telling you what I'm not going to do. I am not going to charge to park. I'm not going to charge to park downtown. I'm not going to charge to park at our beautiful beaches. And I have discussed this, and I could, as Commissioner Anton said, I can go over you privately all the many reasons why we won't be doing that. But we don't need that additional revenue because we have a strong plan and a strong budget. So what I will say is that we have a 5-year capital plan. We have the means and we have the ability to make a wonderful plan that will continue to move our city forward. Now, I want to highlight what I said in my opening about for over a decade, our city raised taxes on its residents every single year. It took my first year as mayor to stop raising taxes for the first time in over a decade. It's a low bar to hit because we didn't lower taxes. We just held them constant for the first time. And what I got to say is I heard a lot of folks at the time say, if you raise taxes this year, if you do it again, maybe in the future, you could have a no tax increase year. But I would say back, and I would say that we had a decade of raising them. And if you had talked to me back in 2014, I'm sure that argument of raise them this year and you don't need to raise them in the future, I think that would apply there. So what I would say to the room is that we do have funding. It's all about good budgeting, prioritizing, and making sure that we get done our top priorities first. And that's exactly what I'm proud to work with city staff to accomplish, and that's what I'm proud to work with the community on accomplishing so far. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Bean. Ms. Minshew, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you. So we have worked hard, I think, to reprioritize and improve some things, but there are just a load of things, including some of the things that you mentioned, that are not being looked at adequately. We had in 2021 a team that closed some walkovers and put a plan in place to replace walkovers. That plan's not being followed because there's no money or the money's been reallocated somewhere else. Yes, the taxes were raised in the past, but they were wasted on things like top tracer, and decisions were not made properly or with the right amount of vetting and understanding in the city, and that needs to change. For at least two, maybe three visioning sessions, city commission, wanted to explore doing a bond referendum for the resiliency and the seawall and also for downtown. Nothing ever came of that because, again, it's a lot of talk and no action. So I think what we have to do on all of these issues is really do some very strategic long-term planning, understand what our options are, understanding really what the priorities are, and holding to those priorities year over year, and stop this every year is a new year and let's just redo the whole thing, which I think is what's been happening. So there needs to be some long-term planning. We need to make some decisions about how we're going to pay for some of these very large items, and we need to stop wasting money on things that are not going to repay or are frivolous. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minshew. Ms. Tootin, you're next. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks, I'm good. We do not tie our budget closely enough to our 5-year capital improvement plan. So the downtown revitalization plan there's a bunch of blanks. We have a lot of the design just up through center, but we don't have a plan to pay for it. We don't have a plan for the future design for the side streets or to how to pay for it. The seawall is an excellent question. We've spent $600,000 on engineering that is really inadequate. It doesn't take us all the way north to the port, and it doesn't take into account what's going to happen with Brett's. So it's I would say a semi-wasted plan, the seawall and the Riverwalk. And how we're going to pay for it, like Janice said, we have talked about a bond. We almost certainly will have to do some kind of a bond. There's no way that the city can come up with that kind of money, and yet we critically need to deal with the downtown flooding. The Tourist Development Council reported that the historic district is one of the #1 reasons that tourists come to visit. For the first time, they reported that the tourists want to see the historic district over the beach. So we have got to protect the historic district. And where we're going to get the funding when we don't pay attention to our plan is an incredibly difficult question. And we capture money from tourists who sleep here, but as our tourists grow over in the western part of the county, we capture no money from visiting tourists who come for the day. So it's something we should discuss. Where are we going to get the money to pay for the maintenance of our facilities?
Thank you. Mr. Pointer, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good. No one likes to pay taxes. I mean, and we have an infrastructure that's having some issues. We've got a lot of buildings that are having issues. And this is a very fair community. And there's very smart people in this community, people who can actually help figure some of this stuff out. But you can't do it without dollars. And one of the things that always bothered me about the way the city operates in financing is that everything has to be done on this calendar year. And it's impossible to do things and fix up the stuff that we need to fix on the backs of this year's taxpayers. It has to be spread out. The things that we're talking about now are multi-million-dollar projects that have to be done. Everyone's houses have gone up in value, which is a wonderful thing, but it's going up in value because of the wonderful city we live in. And if we let the city start to deteriorate, there's a real dominoes effect with the rest of the community. The downtown starts looking a little shabby. The pricing of the houses aren't growing like they should be. So what we really need to do is seriously look at and really go out to the community and say, this is what we're planning on doing. This is how we're planning on spending the dollars. And get buy-in from the community. And say, look, we're going to spread this over 40 years. So the people who move here 5 years from now and have all the benefits of what we have done in those 5 years is going to continue to help to pay for those 40 years. It shouldn't all be on a snapshot of just the citizens at this moment.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, would you like me to repeat the question?
No. So every one of these solutions, and they are great solutions that everyone on this panel has brought up, all rely on the taxpayer dime. Every single one of them puts it back on us. We all want to live our lives out here. We do need a bond. We have multi-million-dollar projects that we need now. If we have visitor paid parking, not residents, not business owners, and not their employees, it is free to install. They take a portion of the profit. We could, fund a bond with visitor paid parking and get our needs met right now and not paid for on the backs of our residents, our senior taxpayers, our families, our working families, that it's getting harder and harder to stay. And I don't want them to have to, pick up and move. And by the way, where are you going to move to? Because it's very expensive in Florida anywhere. It is not a bad idea. It is not something that we should not have a conversation about. We could fund our needs right now, not on our backs of the taxpayers. It's just a simple discussion. I see it as a win-win for everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. I'm going to move to question 3. The established order established by random on Excel today is 13452. So, Mayor Bean, you get to go again.
You're first twice in a row?
I know. 3, yeah.
What is
I
this?
know. Listen, I used an Excel spreadsheet and it, The current commission sought to have the city's land development code amended to allow developed parcels to be subdivided into more lots. Those efforts were suspended last March. As commissioner, do you support changing the LDC to create more residential parcels in the city? If so, why? If no, why not?
Repeat the first part again. What was the first sentence?
The current commission sought to have the city's land development code amended to allow developed into more lots. Those efforts were suspended last March. As commissioner, do you support changing the LDC to create more residential parcels in the city? If so, why? If no, why not?
All right, so this goes back to a 2006 law from Mayor Sapp, big mentor of mine who taught me government at our local high school here. What that law says in our code is that once you build a house on more than one lot, because again, we have very, very small David Yulee platted lots here. Once you build a house on more than one lot, those 2 lots or more become one. That's designed to stop these large historic homes from being torn down and being replaced with what I would call skinny minis. Now, that's something that I certainly disagree with. I don't want our historic homes, and I don't think anybody in this room wants our historic homes being torn down and replaced with much, much smaller, more dense development. Now, I would say that what the question said, let me just disagree with the premise again, it wasn't being amended, it was being clarified, because that's what we all agree the law says, and we want to make sure that that is clear to everybody what that means. So the short answer to the question is absolutely not. I don't disagree. I completely agree with the code where it says that we can't tear down large historic buildings and replace them with smaller ones. That's where, and let me go ahead and be a little clearer on this, is that I think this is in reference to Tringali. This is in reference to the Tringali lot, just no more than a block over here. And I want to be clear here that the recent news that the Fernandina Observer posted, I think completely vindicates what happened last February, where you can see there's something called Live Local. Let me give everybody a little backstory on this. Live Local is something that I don't agree with personally, but it gives people who own property much more power over the municipality. And they can build as dense as possible in that city as long as they do a certain amount of, I'm going to do quote unquote, affordable housing. So that was always part of the negotiation process there. And by rejecting the 12 lots, which they had to begin with, now they're proposing, it looks like 29
Thank you,
30
Mayor
lots.
Bean.
So
Thank
that's
you, Mayor
something that
Bean.
we need to make sure we do. Thank you.
Ms. Minshew, you have the next response. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you. So the short answer is no. I don't believe that the LDC section 10305 or any of those other sections needs to be clarified. I think it's perfectly clear what the intent was when that section was put in that we do not want these underlying lots of records to unnecessarily drive how land development is run and how many pieces of property you can put on a lot that's already got a house or pool or a garage or whatever on it. And I don't actually think this is as relative to Tringali or to Live Local, because these lots are all over the place. They're not just downtown, and it's not just the Tringali property that is often at risk. It's also not just the historic downtown that is at risk with these. So I think the Land Development Code is pretty clear. I don't think it needs to be clarified. And I think we need to ensure that we have a planning department that is adequately staffed and adequately trained and can manage the Land Development Code and the Comprehensive Land Code appropriately. And we do not have that today. And that is, I think, the biggest problem we've got right now with land issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Minshew. Ms. Kelly?
Will you repeat the question?
Certainly.
So I can make sure I can.
Certainly. The current commission sought to have the city's land development code amended to allow developed parcels to be subdivided into more lots. Those efforts were suspended last March. As commissioner, do you support changing the LDC to create more residential parcels in the city? If so, why? If no, why not?
I do not support changing the land development code to, I moved here from Duval County. I don't know how many of you have heard, but I moved here because it is so dense. People leaving our neighborhood, 4 people were killed just leaving the neighborhood. And they're still building in. I came here to get away from that type of overdevelopment. We also, though, have to respect the rights of developers and have responsible conversations with these developers and work with them so that we don't end up with problems. Like we have a problem behind us now. Tringali is an issue. But I am absolutely for keeping the lowest amount of development in our town as possible.
Thank you. Ms. Tootin, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thank you. So 1.03.05, that law was put into place 18 years ago, and I read it very clearly. Our Planning Advisory Board voted unanimously and read it very clearly. When the citizens fought the 12 townhomes, the judge read it very clearly and voted and ruled for the citizens that there was, quote, no plausible explanation for what the commissioners did. The clarification that the majority of the commissioners want is that if there's an unconditioned space, so a garage, a pool, a shed, a patio, so in other words, if the parcel was built out like most of us have our yards built out, that doesn't count, right? Because it's only the house. And so it will, if that clarification goes through, it will enable significant increase in density. There are more than 200 parcels scattered throughout the city that have those same underlying lots that would be at risk of being destroyed by the tall skinny. That when just go look behind Mokama, what's happening some of those streets and the neighborhood. The character of the neighborhoods will be destroyed. And absolutely, people have rights for their property, but the surrounding neighbors have rights too with their property. And when a new construction comes in and instantly lowers your own values, that's not right. And the Tringali property is a split mixed use. The 3rd Street side is mixed use. The 4th Street side is residential. So the Live Local 29 units will never happen because their proposal puts their stormwater on the residential side. It's not going to be an allowable use anyway. They'll have to downsize it. We need to protect the character of our neighborhoods, and we're not doing it.
Thank you, Ms. Tootin. Mr. Pointer? Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, the simple answer is no. The Land Development Code has done pretty well for us now. And I'm a firm believer in property rights. So if someone comes in and they buy a piece of property, they should be allowed to do what they're allowed to do with it within the zoning. But when someone owns a piece of property and then they try to change it so they can get more, that's the problem. When you buy the property, that's the way the property is, and it fits within our land development code. The rub is when you're trying to go in and buy it and then split it and say, well, I'm going to tear down the garage and I'm going to put up another little mini mansion. And then where the pool was on the other side, I'm going to go ahead and take that out and put up another little mini mansion. If you're listening to the community at all, the community doesn't want any more development. So we have to control the development we have. We always hear this, you know, we like development, but we have to control it. Well, this is how you control it. I mean, this is how. We've got rules in place. The people who've moved here who love living here, it's because we have these rules. Now, if we go start changing all the rules and start letting people build on every little piece of parcel that we have left in the city, then we're going to have devolve. And that's not what anybody wants here. So no, leave it alone.
Thank you. We're going to move on to question number 4. The order for this question is 32145. So, Ms. Minshew, this question is for you to answer first. RYAM's proposed bioethanol production plant is a major issue in the city. As a resident of Fernandina Beach, do you support or oppose the bioethanol plant? If yes, why? If no, why?
Thank you. I'm opposed to bringing this very dangerous chemical processing onto a barrier island. I am in full support of the mill. Actually, that's why I am here today, as my family moved here in the 1930s when the mill first opened. And the value that they bring to our community is considerable and long-standing. I also understand the importance of looking for more effective and efficient fuel to reduce our carbon emissions. This is an example of a good idea, but just in the wrong place. A fragile barrier island full of people is not the place for a bioethanol plant. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pointer, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm just not in favor of it. I just can't wrap my head around why anyone would think putting a bioethanol plant on a barrier island a quarter of a mile away from a downtown historic district with 2 ways off the island if you have to evacuate is a good idea. I'm supportive of the mills. When I was a commissioner before, we went through the 8 flags generation thing. A lot of controversy. It's worked out fantastic. I was a supporter of Lignitech. So I'm not against the mill. I'm just against the bad idea.
Thank you. Mayor Bean, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
RYAM's proposed bioethanol production plant is a major issue in the city. As a resident of Fernandina Beach, do you support or oppose the bioethanol plant? If yes, why? If no, why?
Thank you very much. So I'm going to start with something. You won't see this printed in the Fernandina Observer, you won't see it digitally on the Fernandina Observer, is that I'm recusing myself from any and all votes related to bioethanol. And I've said that since day one. I've said absolutely not, and anyone who will listen, anybody who asks about it, I've told them that I will be recusing myself on any and all votes related to this, because as I said earlier in the meeting, I work there. That's my day job. Like 1,000 other families, I get my livelihood from our 2 mills here on the island. And so I'll tell you one thing that I'm not, is anti-job. I am supportive, and I always will be supportive of folks working here on our island. And folks, in my time, I've been talking to hundreds and hundreds of citizens that live here, and most love our mills. Folks, when I talk to some people who have bioethanol concerns, when I asked more probing questions, tonight you heard people that said they're supportive of the mills. When I ask more probing questions, vast majority of the time, it ends up being folks who just simply don't like the mills here on our island. And so what I would say is that we have to always support our community. We have to support our mills. For the last 80 years, the mills have supported our town. And I think it's important that we support the folks that continue to work here. Because I will end with this, is that as an engineer, industrial systems engineer, I was so happy to land a job back in my hometown. When I graduated from the University of Florida, you look around for work, and I made the decision that I'm ready to move home. And when I came back home with my engineering degree, it was only because there was work here for engineers. And there's work here for engineers, there's work here for folks who don't have college degrees, and it's living wages. So folks, we gotta be pro-job. It's very key, and it's part of our diverse economy that makes us a special place to live. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Bean. Ms. Kelly, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm a no on ethanol. I'm a hard no on ethanol. I believe there are plenty of mills that are much more rural, that are not in the middle of our island, in the historic district. I think it just has no place here. There's plenty of places it could go. I'm a no.
Thank you. Ms. Tootin, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. Yeah, I'm a hard no. I am a retired high school chemistry teacher. Right off the bat, our comprehensive plan and our land development code clearly state that chemical manufacturing is not an allowable use within the city limits. So that right there is a done deal for me. We're either going to break our laws or we're going to change our laws. Neither one of which I approve of, because if we change our law and allow chemical manufacturing, then it's a slippery slope. And what else are we going to get? And another main reason is because our air emissions will go up. RIAM is legally lying to us that our air emissions are going to go down because they were legally allowed to submit air baseline data from the last 10 years. And so they submitted data from 2014 when the pollution was up here. Lignotech came online in 2018, dropped pollution down here, but pollution will go up to here. And you can see it in the data. They have to submit their emissions. Last year, they submitted nitrous oxide emissions around 1,400 tons. In their air permit, they said it's going to go up to 1,700 tons. It's a 40% increase. Their sulfur dioxides will go up by more than 100%. Their carbon monoxide will go up by more than 100%. It will be lower than the baseline they submitted in 2014, but to our lungs, it will be higher than what we're breathing today. And then I don't even need to go into the safety, because we're on a barrier island and they're on a spit out into the river. And fighting a fire out there is not so easy. Fighting a fire with carcinogenic foam is not so great. My nephew's a firefighter, said, yeah, Aunt Joyce, and don't let him get it. It can't get in the waterway. You better have a hazmat team. And it's a great product, especially because it's second generation. It's not made from corn. It's made from a waste product. That's great. Great for lowering carbon emissions. Location, terrible. I'm not for it.
Thank you, Ms. Tootin. We're going to move on to question number 5. The order of this question will be 2, 3, 4, 1, and 5. Mr. Pointer, as Commissioner, how will you handle the delicate balance between preserving Fernandina's unique small town historic culture while welcoming more than 1 million tourists annually?
Try to do what I've been doing, supplying good businesses for the community. I consider myself a redeveloper. I know other people call me a developer. What I've developed, we've kept. My family runs them, and we've repurposed buildings into different types of businesses. We haven't developed and cut and run. We're here, and I've been here 25 years. 2 of my kids have jobs. They work here on the island. We, as employers, we employ over 100 people downtown. So I believe in jobs, and I believe in the quality of life that we're all trying to afford here. Without the people coming here, we wouldn't have all these restaurants and bars and all the nightlife and all that type. We wouldn't have it because 14,000 people can't support all this. So we are reliant on visitors that are coming, and I think it's a good thing. but too much of anything is not good. And I think the biggest thing is just being respectful of the community and trying to work within the community. And that's the way we should all be living.
Thank you. Ms. Minshew, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you. So our small town charm is one of the main reasons that we have a thriving tourist economy. And that we have the kind of natural resources that people come here to enjoy, and the historic downtown, the greenway, the beaches, and all of those things. Yet all of those tourists put an undue strain on our economy and on our tax revenue. So while I am supportive of the tourist economy that allows us as residents to have access to artists and to interesting restaurants and food and to great little small stores with very unique and special things to buy, which we would not have any of that if we did not have the tourists. But I do think that it's time for us to take a hard look at how we can figure out how to generate revenue out of that stream other than what we're getting today. As someone recently said, we're a complex city with complex issues, and there are often complex solutions to those problems. But if we don't sit down and talk about it and reach far and wide and bring divergent opinions and resources together to begin to understand what our options are and how we can increase revenue so that we can better support not just our residents but also our tourists, then I think that is something that we have to take a hard look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly, do you need me to repeat the question?
No, balance between tourism and residents on our island. My position is I always want to put our residents first. I don't want to adapt our beautiful island for tourism. They're coming here because of the way it is right now, because of the look and the feel and the hometown. I forget the name. What is it? Mayberry. I refer to it as a Mayberry since I've been coming here. I love the feel. I don't want to change that feel. I believe that at some point, heads and beds will not slow down, but it will kind of max out. You have to believe that. At a certain point, the heads and beds will all be full. And so I think that will kind of help that end. I will always put our residents and the needs of our residents first and not adapt our place for the tourists. I hope that helps and answers your question. I will always err on the side of taxpayers, businesses, and residents, and the tourists come second, and not build our island out to accommodate tourism.
Thank you. Mayor Bean, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
As Commissioner, how will you handle the delicate balance between preserving Fernandina's unique small town historic culture while welcoming more than 1 million tourists annually?
Thank you, Mayor Lentz. The balance is incredibly important to our hometown, and I've said that many, many times. Is the balance is because people of all walks of life live here. There's people who work, there's people who retired here, there's people who grew up here, there's people who move here, and we love them all. It's a real place. People move here year after year because they found a place that's not Hilton Head, it's not Myrtle Beach, it's definitely not the Villages. This is a real place, and people love living here. How do we keep it that way? How do we keep that balance? It's all about taxes. That's the one lever that the City Commission can pull, and that's all about efficient budgeting. So we've alluded to this earlier in the meeting about how can we budget more efficiently and make sure things go well. It's partnerships with the county, partnerships with the state. Your current sitting City Commission has done an exceptional job of repairing relationships with the county. Ones that definitely weren't there before, but certainly are now. And now we're in situations where the county is showing up when we need their help at Ybor Alvarez Soccer Complex to completely redo that. The county's coming to the table with $2 million. The city's got $2 million, the county's got $2 million, and we're about to have a world-class soccer facility that's going to be exceptional. We're partnering with the state on our seawall, continuing that project. The state, and thank you to Governor DeSantis signing this budget, giving $2 million to Fernandina Beach to continue that project and moving it forward. By partnering with people like the state of Florida to work on our lighthouse and partnering with the county to work on projects like the Peck Center track, we are able to make sure our residents have what they need without harming those most vulnerable. I want to end with this. When it comes to taxes, people say all the time, in fact, I remember the first time we didn't raise taxes, I sent an email about somebody who said it's irresponsible to not raise taxes because we're a wealthy community. But here's a stat as per the 2020 U.S. Census, the most recent one we have. The poverty rate within the city of Fernandina Beach is higher than the national average. If you live here in Fernandina, you are more likely
Thank
to
you,
be in
Mayor
poverty
Bean.
than those.
Thank
We've got to
you.
hold taxes for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Tootin,
Hi, yes.
would you like me to repeat the question?
No, thanks. I'm good. Yeah, I think it's a delicate balance of how do we make decisions for the residents first. If you grew up here or if you moved here, one of the things, as Janice said, is you can't have a small town of 13,000 people that has live music somewhere every night, unless you have tourists who are bringing in a lot of dollars, paying for a lot of the things we all really enjoy. And so, but how do you balance a new phenomenon that's happening, which is the growth outside the county? Many of you have been coming here or lived here your whole life. It's exceptional what's going out there. And out in the western part of the county, those are people who are not coming and spending the night. They're not paying a bed tax because we capture a bed tax. Or if they go to restaurants, we capture some of the sales tax. But a day tripper, we capture nothing. And so it's extremely difficult to say, all right, we, the citizens of Fernandina, we're paying taxes that build our boardwalks, that build our bathrooms, that build our trash cans, that pay for all sorts of things. And yet a lot of people are coming and not paying anything for it. Is that what we want to continue to do? Maybe. And we want to continue to offer it for free to our neighbors? Maybe. One of the things we absolutely could do is be much more careful with short-term rentals. There are short-term rentals in the city that are illegally operating. You probably know some down the street from you, and our code enforcement is always working on that, but we could do a better job because it changes the values of the homes and makes it more difficult to have a sense of community.
Thank you, Ms. Tootin. We're on our last question of the evening. The order will be 41235. So, Ms. Kelly, we begin with you. As a commissioner, it is important to listen to citizens inside and outside of these chambers. Public comments not on the agenda were previously allowed at the beginning of the meeting and now are permitted at the very end of the meeting. Where should this public comment portion be scheduled in meetings, and how do you plan to engage citizens for feedback?
I personally would move the public comments and observations to the beginning of the meetings. I think that is the job. I think we are public servants and we need to listen to our constituents. Also, I would have meetings, I don't know what you call them, but we could have meetings, whatever, anywhere. I walk the streets all day and talk to people, walking my dog. Anytime anybody would be totally accessible, but I do believe it should be in the beginning of the meetings because that's the job. It's a labor of love, but that's the job.
Thank you. Mayor Bean, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
As a commissioner, it is important to listen to citizens inside and outside of these chambers. Public comments not on the agenda were previously allowed at the beginning of the meeting and are now permitted at the very end of the meeting. Where should this public comment portion be scheduled in meetings, and how do you plan to engage citizens for feedback?
Thank you, Mayor Lentz. Public comment occurs throughout the entire meeting. Let's set the record straight on this. So every single time there's any voting issue, there is public comment on that. Now, folks, the reason this change was originally made was because I'll tell a story about there was a woman who was imposed with a $28,000 code enforcement fine. and she came to the meeting to speak on an agenda item that she was part of, and she came to give public comment on an item that affected her, and she could not leave. She could not go home because she was about to be imposed with a $28,000 code enforcement fine unless she came to speak her piece. That same night, there was over 90 minutes of unscheduled public comment for something that was not on the agenda, something that would not be decided that night, and for that reason, we got to make a decision. Which public comment goes first? Is it the public comment that is scheduled, the public comment that people came tonight to speak about something that will be voted on, something that will be made a decision, because people can speak on that when the vote is made? Or should it be public comment that was not scheduled? That's a question and that's a debate. But I've heard a lot of people generalize this by saying public comment was moved to the end. That is simply not the case. It's all about who do you prioritize, because if you move public comment not on the agenda to the front, you are in effect moving all the people who came to speak on agenda items, you're moving them to the back. So we work on an efficient meeting, and that's something I really pride myself in, is as your mayor, I make sure that meetings are really well run. They move and flow effectively, and we can hear from everybody. And I'm prepared to sit as long as we need to hear from every possible citizen, but that's something that I want to make sure we accomplish. Furthermore, we've added more public comment. This current city commission, it was a 3-2 vote. 3 out of the 5 commissioners agreed that we're going to add public comment to workshops. That's something that's never been done before, but we did add public comment to workshops, and that enabled more public comment than ever before. On workshop nights, we hear public comment before the meeting even starts, and then we hear public comment again at the end.
Thank you,
very
Mayor
much.
Bean. Mr. Pointer, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, you move it to the front. I mean, that's what everyone wants. I was a commissioner 2 times, and it was always in the front. The interesting thing about when you have a commission meeting, if something comes up, as Mayor Bean just suggested, you make an adjustment at that meeting, but you don't do it then for the rest of your life. You just make the adjustment for that meeting. So I think it's really important that we listen to the community. When I was a commissioner, I had a monthly meeting that was free for drinks and my wife's wonderful cookies. And you could come ask me any questions that you want. I also happen to have a few restaurants that no one is short of asking me, hey, you got a minute? Come over here. I want to yell at you about something. So I think it's very important. I will continue to, as I still do now, which is why I'm running, listen to enough people, and that's actually why I'm running again. A lot of people suggest that I jump back in.
Thank you, Mr. Pointer. Ms. Minshew, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you. So when I'm elected, the first order of business that I'll propose at a workshop is moving public comments back to the beginning of the agenda, where it has been for years and years. I would also want to look at holding quarterly town hall type meetings where we can hear from our citizens and where we and commissioners and staff will do a lot of listening to our community. I do think that there is a general feeling that this current commission does not want to hear from their constituents. That may be a false impression, but it is the impression that I hear from people all the time. So I think that this new commission after the election needs to do a lot of work to heal that issue and make sure that people feel heard and feel listened to. So as a new commissioner, I promise that I will listen and be available to all the citizens of the city and of the community so that we can make this the best city possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Tootin,
Yeah.
would you
I
like me to
would
repeat the question?
No, thanks. I would like comments moved back to the beginning of the meeting, and it's not just because of things that I've come to the commission to advocate for. And part of the reason there can be dozens and dozens of people here is because the commission has refused to put items onto the agenda. And so we've had to force ourselves onto the agenda or into the room and to be heard. I think holding not only a quarterly town hall is a great idea. One of my sisters sits on her city commission in the town I grew up in. she can't believe we don't hold town halls. They hold town halls whenever something's hot. They'll do one middle of the week in the evening and then an identical one on a Saturday morning to try to hit as many people. People want to be heard, and they need to be heard in person oftentimes. Email and a phone call is great, but when a couple months ago watched a woman wait till the very end of the meeting in order to get up, and she actually was crying at the podium because of the flooding that's going on in her house because of the construction next to her, and she had to wait, and she was afraid to come to the meeting that night because it might rain, and she was thinking she needed to get back home to her sandbags. And it's not, and she had emailed and called, but she felt like she needed to come here and in person plead her case, and it's not right. And if it really was that big of a deal, we could make a modification at the beginning. We could say maybe only the first 10 people who show up get to speak at the beginning, or maybe you only get a minute at the beginning and you can have 2 more minutes at the end, or I don't know what. There's ways to help people be heard.
Thank you. Well, that concludes all of our 6 questions this evening. Thank you to the audience for being very patient. We're going to move into the closing remarks, and the random established order is 52431. So I do just want to take a moment and say that I understand the complexities of the issues that you all are talking about, and reiterate how appreciative I am that you are willing to serve already, and that you are willing to serve and have served in the past. It takes guts, and it is a very complex city. So my hat's off to you, and always the utmost respect, because these decisions are difficult. So thank you for taking the time tonight. You each now have 1 minute for your closing remarks, and Ms. Tootin, you are first.
So yeah, I have a vision for a city where our small town charm is preserved, where we still want to live here 30 years from now. I know I do. Where we take residents and their issues first. I want to see a city where the future residents 100 years from now, when all of us are dead, and literally all of us, that the future residents will look back and thank us for some of the things we did, because we walk around the city and are grateful for some of the beautiful homes that were saved, some of the beautiful trees that were saved. What are we doing for the future residents? What kind of resiliency are we building in when we know sea level rise is coming and it will only get worse? And not only are we not fully protecting our canopy, we're losing trees every day, but we're not growing our canopy. And that's what the future residents need us to do, and live in the here and now, satisfy ourselves, but the future resiliency for our children. So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Sorry, I thought that was a timer, Kathy. Okay, thank you. Mr. Pointer, closing remarks, 1 minute.
Yeah, I've done it before, and I was okay the first time, a little bit better the second time. Maybe this time I'll be really, really good. I don't know. There's some retractors that have been here that might speak differently of that. Look, it's not an easy job. It really isn't. And everybody who runs up here, at some point in time, you're going to make someone mad. They're not going to agree with you on something. But what I promise I will do, as I have in the past, you will always know where I'm coming from. You will always know the reason why I voted the way I did. And then let bygones be bygones.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, everybody, for being so gracious and having me tonight. I just look forward to serving every citizen on our island, but most of all in the city of Fernandina Beach, every business owner and their employees. They're a huge part of it. I'll make it my labor of love. I have the time, the energy, and the experience to manage and balance our beautiful city going forward. Will always err, and I will err, everybody does. I will always err on the side of the residents, business owners, and their employees on this island.
Thank you. Ms. Minshew.
Thank you. So I want Fernandina Beach to continue to be a charming small town with beautiful beaches, a thriving historic downtown, amenities for both residents and visitors to enjoy, and continued focus on maintaining our natural resources. And all of this is possible, but we need long-term planning and proper management of our resources. It's also possible to maintain a steady tax base and find ways to bring additional revenues into the city so that we do not burden our taxpayers. So I am ready to listen and to engage, and I want to hear what our citizens have to say about the issues that are in front of us. And I look forward to being your next city commissioner when you vote for me, Denise Minshew, on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Bean?
Hey, thank you to the Observer for hosting me tonight. Fernandina is my home. It always has been. It always will be. It was 80 years ago that my grandfather and my grandmother, they moved here after my grandfather fought in World War II. He came here, and he was the first generation of being to serve on this commission. It's been my honor for the past 4 years to serve you as the third generation of being on this commission. I never met my grandfather. He passed away the year before I was born. But why am I doing what I'm doing? It's because we have the next generation of being is coming, and just a few short weeks away, we're going to have a new baby girl will be entering the world. I want to make sure that we have a community that is as nice as the one that I came into. That's what I'm all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bean. I want to thank you all again, and best of luck to all of you. Remember to vote, that the vote by mail ballots are already out, and you can drop by the Supervisor of Elections office to vote now if you want to. Early voting begins October 23rd and will run through November the 2nd. Election day, the polls will be open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and that day is November 5th. So it has been my pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you, Mayor Lednovich, for asking me, and I'm going to turn it over to him.